Hi everyone, today I'm going to be covering Anbernics' latest handheld, the RG503. The RG503 has a new chipset handheld, the RK3566. The RK3566 offers more power than the RK3326, though not a generational leap, meaning it's not going to play any more consoles than the RK3326 handhelds. The RK3566 and the RG503 is far more efficient than the RK35662, meaning that it will get a lot more playtime over the RK3326 handhelds, even with the same spec battery. It's also got a 5 GHz Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and HDMI out support. It's unfortunately only got 1 GB of RAM, although you won't likely be impacted by the emulation. It will limit the level of ports that could eventually be available on the RG503 and stop Android running on the RG503 efficiently. The star of the show of the RG503 though is definitely its stunning 4.95-inch OLED 16:9 display running at a 960 by 544 pixel resolution. Design-wise, the RG503 is quite Marmite-like. When it was first announced, I was not a fan of the design, but somehow became more forgiving of it the more I looked at images. The time I'd got it in my hands, I was actually quite won over by it, and ergonomically like it for the D-pad oriented games. If you're dependent on the joystick in games, then you will start to wish for stacked shoulder buttons, but for D-pad oriented games, the design actually works quite well. It's very lightweight and fits well in the hands because of the more ergonomic grips at the back. In terms of controls, the RG503 doesn't feel quite as solid and reliable as the other Anbernic handhelds. They're not terrible by any means, and the more I used the RG503, the more I got used to them, and the better they felt. But I've never had that adjusting period with previous Anbernic handhelds. I personally consider Anbernic handhelds to have fantastic responsive controls, and the RG503 just takes getting used to. The D-pad especially needs a good while to get used to its travel arc in order to pull combos and fighters off consistently. The included firmware for the RG503 is a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, there's some neat included tools like a streaming tool, key test and the Kodi media pair. It also makes you make game or system level changes like setting the integer scaling, which is great because everything's full screen by default. On the other hand, emulation just isn't as smooth as it could be on the RK3566 chip within it. And there's just a few bugs present like inconsistent audio controls that ultimately leaves the RG503 begging for custom firmware to get the most out of it and unlock the rest of its potential. This is more than a bit of a shame and probably the biggest thing against the RG503 at present. I think if the RG503 had been released 18 months ago, got some dev support and custom firmware that pushes every bit of processing power out of it like the RK3326 handhelds have, I think the RG503 would probably be a lot of people's go-to handhelds. But with it released today, it does show how much the landscape's changed just over the last few months alone. To demonstrate this, I've got Super Smash Bros. Remix running here, and the default Nintendo 64 emulator really seems to struggle with the RG503, where it should be more than capable. You can change the core to get less rendering issues but take a performance drop, or you can take a visual and audio bugs for the better but still not perfect performance. I'm hoping this does get resolved in future, as a lot of emulation is fine, and everything looks so amazing on the OLED screen. Due to the deep blacks the OLED offers, I really don't mind the black bezels around the gaming, and if things like the Nintendo 64 emulation was smoothed out, the RG503 would be so much better for it. So I'll leave you to some more emulation now and summarise back up at the end.
all major roads and capture the suspect.
All in all, the RG503 would be a respectable first retro gaming handheld. It has an ergonomic design, decent wireless connectivity mixed with HDMI out, and has pretty decent price to boot. Yes, the controls aren't as good as some of Anbernic's other handhelds, but the more I use it, the more I got used to it. The main limiting factor for me at the moment is its firmware, unfortunately, as it's holding it back in areas where it could shine, like with Nintendo 64 emulation. The RG503 has won me over since its initial announcement, but now I'm just left hoping it gets picked up by the amazing devs of the community and given the firmware it deserves, as I think with it, it could be something special. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.